Do you want to be healthy, fit, and energized? Still take care of everything on your to-do list at the same time? But do you find that actually doing the things, actually taking the actions to take care of your health and your well-being keeps falling off the bottom of that to-do list? Maybe you get to the end of each day and you're asking yourself, OMG, where did all that time go? I meant to get so much more done, and I meant to go for the walk, go for the run, go to the gym, um, prepare that healthy meal, whatever it is. And you may find that when you get to the end of a day, after running on that treadmill all day long, you may not have the energy, not even to exercise, maybe not even to prepare a healthy meal for yourself and your family. If that experience rings any bells with you, please know you're not alone. I've been there, and so have many others, including many of my clients. And I'm here to tell you there is a solution, and one that's not actually that hard to do. Today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you some simple and easy hacks that you can use. It's really more than hacks, it's a 5-step method that's really easy for you to put in place in your life without actually taking a huge amount of time out of your schedule, so that you can make taking care of your health and well-being just a natural part of who you are and of your day-to-day living. So, hey, if you're here live, just take a moment right now and let me know by dropping live in the comments, LIVE, live. All right. And if you're catching this on the replay, and I know that for some people this is the middle of the night, I apologize. That's why we have a replay available. So if you're catching this on the replay, just drop replay in the comments. All right. So, one other thing too. I know that life is busy, and for many people, you may prefer actually to be able to read through the notes rather than having to take notes yourself. So if you'd like a copy of my show notes, my notes that I'm referring to today, I'm very happy to share those with you. Just drop notes in the comments below. I'll just pop a little reminder up for us for that. So just comment notes if you'd like a copy of the show notes from today. Cool? All righty. So what are we going to cover today? So the reason that I'm doing this session today is that, actually, firstly, we might not actually have met yet in person. So let me just, before I dive in, let me take a minute to introduce myself. I'm Anna McKinlay, and for around a decade now, I've been helping busy women to create a really strong foundation of practices and habits and routines to support well-being and happiness and a momentum of accomplishment in their lives, so that you can become empowered to thrive in your business, as a parent, and as the human being that you are, the unique human that you are. And I do this through what I call my total well-being roadmap, through online content like this, online courses, and through my one-on-one coaching and group coaching programs. Because, and this is really something that I'll fess up, I'm actually obsessive about this. And the reason I obsess about this is that I know so many, many people today in today's busy world set intentions to be healthy, to eat better, to move more, to get more sleep, to set that example for our families too, right? So that we can teach them some good habits to take into life as they grow. But it's one thing to set the intention, and it's a whole nother thing to consistently follow through on it. And that's where we get stuck. Most people don't consistently take action on our intentions for the lifestyle we want to be living. Just as an illustration, and you've probably heard this before, but New Year's resolutions, the top New Year's resolutions are always around health. In 2022, the top 3 were exercise more, eat better, and lose weight. And that's generally the trend. These are the things that when we get to the end of the year, we go, oh my goodness, another year where I didn't manage to make it happen. This year is going to be different, and we set the New Year's resolution. But the sad thing is, based on past patterns, even by now, March, well over half of the people who set those goals at the start of the year have already given up. And by the time we get to the end of the year, over 90% of people will have given up on themselves yet again. And it's not because there's anything wrong with them. It's not because we're lazy. It's not because we don't have enough willpower and all of that kind of stuff. It's nothing to do with that at all. And it's not even because we don't have enough time or energy, although that can feel really true, right? It's not actually the real reason why that change, why creating the healthy lifestyle we want can feel so hard. I'm going to briefly share with you the real reason that we get stuck and that we self sabotage in this area of our life. And I'm also going to share with you, as I said before, 5 hacks. It's really a 5-step process that's really simple, that's proven, and that will help you to integrate health and well-being practices into your lifestyle in a way that is sustainable, that doesn't require massive reserves of willpower and motivation. We're going to do this in a way that kind of slips the change under the radar of that resistance of change that leads us to self sabotage. How does that sound? We're going to be sneaky so that we can actually make it work. Because let's just talk for a moment about why it's so hard. I want to be really, really clear with you. And I know I said this a few minutes ago, but for me, this is a really important point. If in the past you have found it hard to make changes in your lifestyle, and this might be changes to do with health and well-being, which is my main focus today, it might be changes in other areas of your life. You've set an intention, you've thought about the plan that you're going to take, the changes that you're going to make, the new habits that you want, but it just hasn't stuck. That self-sabotage has crept in, or you found that, as I said at the start, you get to the end of each day and somehow you just haven't quite got to the action. If that's happened to you in the past, please know, number one, there is nothing wrong with you. All this means is that you are a human being with a human brain and a human nervous system acting like a human being. All right, so that's the first thing. This doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. And the second thing is, part of the reason why we get stuck in this trap is that the ways we've been taught to introduce change actually don't work. Most of us have been taught to make changes in a way that completely fails to account for how our brains and nervous systems work. We've been taught things like set the big, hairy, audacious goal, take massive action, set these tasks and plans in place and just go out and just do it, right? And if you've tried that in the past, you've probably found that it takes a huge amount of willpower, a huge amount of motivation. And for most of us, to be blunt, after the first few weeks of doing it, we kind of run out of steam. We start to lose momentum. We might get knocked off course again and again. The excuses start to become more and more convincing. The self-sabotage creeps in and we just fall off the wagon. And it gets harder and harder to get back on that wagon until, like those people with the New Year's resolutions, we just go, maybe this just isn't for me. But that's not what's really going on. So let's just talk a little bit so you can understand what's really going on here. I'm just going to share with you what the reason is why it can feel so hard, and so that we can then get into the 5-step process for kind of sabotaging the self-sabotage. We're actually making change in a way that will work for you and that doesn't take all of the energy. So can we talk a little bit of neuroscience? I'm not going to get really technical. I'm just going to brush over the surface. But here's some really important stuff to understand. When we try to make a change, we consciously set an intention and we make a conscious decision to take action. And we feel like we're in control, but then all this stuff happens to trip us up. What is really going on is that our subconscious mind is not on board with our conscious intent. So research has shown, this can be a little bit scary for some of us. We like to think we're in control of our life, right? That we've got our hands firmly on the steering wheel, but I'm afraid that's just not the case. What's really going on is that as human beings, most of the decisions and most of the choices that we make every single day are actually driven by our subconscious mind and by habits. We often think of habits as behaviors, but what they really are, they're kind of like little subroutines in our brain that, when a certain set of circumstances happens, it presses play on the subroutine and we just automatically kick into the behavior. like brushing your teeth, or the way that you put on your shoes. We don't think about it, we just do it automatically. So, almost half of the decisions we make and the actions we take every day are completely habitual. They're automatic. We do it without even thinking about it. But a total of more than 95% of all of the decisions that we make every day, how we show up, what we say, what we do, more than 95% is actually driven by our subconscious mind. So that's our beliefs about who we are, how the world works, our beliefs around our self image, our beliefs about things like how worthy we are of having certain outcomes, and also, as I mentioned before, our habits. So if we set an intent to make a change that is out of alignment with our existing self image, our existing patterns, and change is by definition, right? It's a change, it's something different. We want to do something different in our lives. We want to have some different patterns. We want to have a different level of health. We want to eat differently. We want to think differently, whatever it is. That's different from our existing self image and our existing patterns. And so that 95% that's sort of managing most of our day is actually pushing against our intention for for that life of well-being, vitality, accomplishment, all of the things that we might want. So, does that make sense to you? Just drop a comment or note below to share any ahas. But that is why it can feel so hard to change. And, often people refer to this as resistance to change, right? We have these existing patterns, beliefs, thoughts, self image that has created our existing experience of life. And so, if we want a new experience of life, we are actually operating against that. That self image. All right, so I'm not going to go into that in too much more detail because the good news is, number one, that explains why it's so hard. You've got a reason now, and you can go, "Oh, it's not just me; it's just the way that we are." Number two, there's some really good news because you can change that. Our brains are constantly evolving and constantly changing. So is our nervous system, and it's doing that based on the thoughts that we choose and how we show up, where we put our energy and focus. And you actually do have some control over that. The thing is, how do we actually make those shifts without pushing directly against, without like 5% of our conscious intent pushing against the 95% of our underlying beliefs, subconscious, self image, and all that stuff I was talking about? So I'm going to share with you a simple process because what we want to do, and this is where most of us get it wrong. We think that we need to take big change. If I want to be healthier, I have to go to the gym 3 times a week, or exercise, move for at least 30 minutes 3 or 4 times a week, or whatever it is. There's all sorts of things that people will tell us that we need to do. But if we start trying to do that straight away, that's where we're butting up against our resistance to change. And that's where we fail because we just can't sustain it for long enough to put those new patterns in place. What we can do is create change in a way that slips under the radar so that we can create new habits, so that we can actually create and nurture a new self image that moves us down the path to becoming just naturally and automatically the healthy, vital, energized, fit person we might want to be. Whatever else it is. I'm assuming that you're listening to this because you want more health, more wellness, more vitality. But what I'm about to share with you actually applies to any change that you want to make in life. And the beautiful thing is that these simple steps will help you to massively increase your chances of actually sticking with the change for long enough so that it actually becomes part of your self-image, part of who you are, and so that it becomes natural and you don't have to effort your way into change. It's just, hey, that's just who I am. And that's a really nice way to be. And then once you have that locked in, you can upgrade it a little bit and then a little bit and then a little bit so that you are constantly growing into the kind of person who you choose to be in life. And there can be no limits. You're the person who gets to choose, right? So, shall we dive in? All right. 5 steps to this process, and I'm just going to walk through them, and you might want to come back and listen to the replay and press pause so you can actually go through this. The first 2 steps is a little bit of an exercise for you to pause, maybe grab a piece of paper and a pen now if you want to. If you're watching the replay, pause it, go and grab a piece of paper and a pen or pencil, and so that you can actually do this as we go. It doesn't take very long, but it really makes a difference if we walk through the exercises as we go. So step 1 is, drum roll. Step 1 is actually thinking about, who do I want to be in 5 years? Because you've got some patterns in your life right now, and some of them will be really good patterns and habits and things that you're consistently doing in your life. And some of them may be habits and patterns that you look at and you go, I wish I could shift this. You know what those things are, right? The question for you to ask yourself right now is, if I continue with the lifestyle habits and patterns that I have in place right now, if I continue along this path with no changes, who will I be and what will my life be like in 5 years? Right? And then ask yourself, if I were to make some changes to put more focus on my health, on my well-being, on exercise, on eating well, on drinking more water, and so on, who will I be in 5 years? And you then get to choose, which version of myself do I want to nurture? Which version of myself do I want to bring into being? And by the way, for anyone who's here live, I know some people have joined us. Firstly, welcome. Great to have you here joining me. And just drop a comment in the chat to share any aha moments that you've had so far. And just drop a live in the chat so that we all know that you are here as well. So welcome along. So step number 1, who do you choose to be in 5 years? The person that you'll become if we make no changes to our lifestyle, to our habits, to how we're showing up each day? Or who would you be if you actually do make some changes to your lifestyle, to your health and well-being habits? Right? Have a think about that. Maybe jot down some notes. And here's the important thing in step 1. You get to choose. In fact, a really useful exercise can be in your mind, actually closing your eyes and thinking, what if I could actually speak to my future self 5 years from now? Eyes closed, take a deep breath. If I could actually part the curtains of time and talk to myself 5 years from now and ask her, is there anything that you'd like me to change in my life so that you can be in a great place in that future? What's she going to say? Is there anything she's going to ask you to adjust? And that can give us some really good ideas about what changes we might want to make. So that's the first step. Thinking about our future self, research has shown that it's a really powerful motivator for us to make lifestyle change. So I do recommend that you reflect on this, maybe journal on it, and think about who you want to be in 5 years. Should we go on to step number 2? All right. So step number 2 is thinking about that version of yourself that you choose to become. Right? And so maybe that's a version of yourself who's gone to another level in terms of your vitality, your energy, quality of sleep, your health, the level of enjoyment you have in life, right? Whatever that means to you. Think about that version of yourself and ask yourself, how does that version of you think? How does she speak? What kinds of actions does she just consistently and naturally take each day? And how do those things differ from your current day-to-day living, right? What are the shifts? And so think about those things. Think about those differences and just brainstorm. Again, with your pen and paper, just write down whatever comes to mind in terms of how she thinks, how she speaks, how she feels, and how she acts on a daily basis. Make a few notes about those. Okay, so that's step 2. And I'll just bring that up as a reminder. How does that future version of yourself, that next level version, think, feel, speak, and act? All right. Now we get to the really juicy stuff, which is step 3. And that is where you get to look at that list that you've brainstormed. How does that version of you think, feel, speak, and act, and pick one thing, one small change, or one of those changes that you're going to start putting in place right now. Now, there is a magic bullet to this, all right? It's called the slight edge effect. It's also been called Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's been called the compound effect by Darren Hardy. It is the secret sauce. And this is identify the change you want to make and then pull it back way, 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 way back until you make it into a tiny, 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 super small, tiny little step that you can start taking within the next 24 hours. And when I say a tiny, super small step, I mean a tiny, super small action. That is so easy for you to do. So easy for you to do that it requires no willpower, that it is really, really, really easy to do, that you can just do it almost without even having to think about it. It's got to be that easy, because we don't want to, let that resistance to change part of your brain know that there's anything going on, right? We want to slip under the radar. So we want to make that change really small, something that's so easy and so effortless that you can do it within 24 hours, and you can do it the next day and the next day and the next day. And when we make the changes that small, I've spoken about this in other videos, I think, when we make the changes that small, they become habits much, much more quickly, provided that we do them consistently each day. It doesn't even matter if you miss a day, to be honest, but if we're consistent with it, it will become a habit much more quickly. And once it's a habit, you don't even need to think about it. And then you can add the next layer on, and then the next layer, and then the next layer. And that, my dears, is the secret to making lasting, sustainable change in a way that's easy. Okay? It does require us to let go of everything that we've been taught about getting the change quickly and taking massive action. Because the expectations of making the change quickly and taking massive action is why most people fail. It does not work because it's operating against the way that our brains are wired. Okay, super small action, so easy to do that it doesn't require willpower, taken consistently, ideally on a daily basis. And that is actually the quickest way to lasting change. All right, so that's step number 3. And welcome to those who've just joined as well. Drop any ahas that you're gaining as we go along the way. And if you missed the start, the replay will be available, so you can jump onto that as well. Also, if you want to catch up, if you prefer written notes, drop notes in the comment, like literally the word notes, and I will send you a link to my notes that I'm referring to today so that you can just read up on it at your leisure and implement these changes. All right, so that's step 3 out of 5 steps. I will do a recap at the end too, just so that you're clear on the whole process. So we've identified the small change we're going to make, something that we can do within 24 hours. The next step, plan it. And this is actually absolutely vital. This is the secret, to be completely honest, to making every day a success. If you like, I'll expand on that a bit more in another video. But for our purposes today, to make the change that's going to lead you towards the version of yourself that you want to grow into, you've identified the small change. We want to plan it. That means pre-planning before you go to sleep tonight, ideally. What is that change? When are you going to do it in your day? And I strongly recommend that what you do is you think about your existing routines and think, when is the most natural place for me to hook that change in to something that I already do automatically? So just after I've brushed my teeth, I will. Or just after I've had my morning coffee, I will. Or immediately after I get home from work, I will. That's the kind of thing we're talking about. Decide it and plan it. And now the secret sauce to get your brain on board with this is to do something I call mental rehearsal. The best time to do this is before you go to sleep, but it's about closing your eyes. It actually helps if you can roll your eyes up a little bit so that you're looking at the top of your eyelids, even at the back of your forehead. And as you're looking at that, imagine that you're looking at a movie of yourself taking the action successfully. And then as you're looking at that movie, imagine that you can step into it and live yourself taking that action successfully. And when you do that, that's actually instructing your brain that you've already done it successfully, and it's going to make it so much easier for you to do the next day. All right. So pre-plan and mentally rehearse. Okay. Plan it in your schedule, plan it in your mind. And now we come to step 5, which is kind of obvious, right? We've planned it. The whole purpose of planning it is we want to do it. So make sure that you actually do the action, and really importantly, catch yourself succeeding. What does that mean? That means when you do the action, notice that you've done it. Give yourself a pat on the back. Give your brain and yourself the reward of acknowledging and celebrating yourself, because that creates the motivation to do it again. Okay. Not just for our conscious self, but for our subconscious mind. Our brain loves that feeling of being recognized and rewarded. You might have noticed that feeling of accomplishment and achievement's a nice feeling, right? So we want to get all of the juices out of that. That will create the motivation to do it again tomorrow, because that's what we want to do, right? That's the next step. Once you've done it once, it's not going to become a pattern unless we rinse and repeat the process. So you know what the action is. You can pre-plan it for the next day, maybe even, see, what have I learned from today? Pre-plan it, mentally rehearse it, do it again, catch yourself succeeding. And when we do that, we build a kind of momentum. It's like a tsunami, a tidal wave. When the energy of a tidal wave is out in the deep ocean, you can hardly see it. It's just a ripple on the surface of the ocean, very hard to detect. But as it gets closer to land, the energy is kind of built up and built up and built up. And as it gets closer to land, it becomes the big tidal wave that can have so much power. And so when you're doing these small changes consistently every day, what you're doing is you're creating that kind of momentum and power. Do you want a tsunami of accomplishment in your life? It can start with something as small as this. So, right, one last thing before we wrap up. There is some secret sauce, the magic sauce. Would you like to know the magic sauce for success? And this goes not just for creating new healthy habits. This goes for anything that you want to accomplish in your life. And I'm just going to check the chat because I can see we've got, hey, Kristen, so good to see you here. Thanks for your comment, and to everyone else who's watching as well. Thank you so much for joining me live. If you've got any ahas from what I've shared with you so far, feel free to drop them in the comments. I'm just going to share with you the magic, the silver bullet. And just very, very briefly, there's a beautiful story, a client I worked with for a few years ago, and I was doing leadership coaching for her and a group of her colleagues, right? So it was, they were part of an executive team. We were focused on leadership skills and leadership coaching and all of that kind of thing. But what was really interesting, because we covered, these core concepts of what does it take for us to kind of go to our next level in life. And she started making changes to her health and well-being, some really significant changes. She'd been feeling stuck in that area of her life and had really given up on herself. She emailed me after the end of that program, and one of the things that she said, like, everything had shifted for her, from the way she was showing up at work and engaging, her relationship with her son. But the big thing, which was actually outside of the direct scope of what we were doing, her big thing was she had achieved weight loss and a change in her body and her energy and her well-being and her health and her habits around that she just did not believe was possible for her anymore. She'd completely given up on being able to achieve that. I'm going to share with you part of what that secret sauce, the magic, was that worked for her and works for so many others. And it comes down to one word. And the word is certitude. What is certitude? When I was first introduced to that word, I thought, there's no way that that's a word. I've never heard of that. I went and looked it up in the dictionary just to be sure. And certitude basically is being so certain of a thing that it's like, it's more certain than certain. It's in fact, Will Smith puts this really well when he says, when I choose to do something, when I decide to do something, it's already done, y'all. It just takes a while for the world to catch up. That is certitude. So if you want to make lasting shift, whether it's with your life, your health and well-being and your lifestyle habits, or even if it's in a different area of life, certitude is the magic sauce. It's choosing to know that it's already done. It's just a matter of you kind of doing the daily steps to be consistent with the knowing that it's already done. And that's absolutely magic. Once we step into that, the momentum happens by itself. So certitude, when you are planning, pre-planning, choosing that step, when you're planning your day, even when you wake up in the morning, choose that feeling of certitude, of knowing it is done, right? And the more we step into that, the stronger that feeling gets. And that becomes who you are. So you actually have a new self image and a new identity. And so you're no longer pushing against the old subconscious patterns. That's the magic of certitude, right? And in fact, I will just put that up in the caption so that you can catch it. The magic source is certitude. Alrighty, so we've covered a lot. Thanks so much there for your comment, Kristen. And I know that you know how powerful this is, so it's awesome that that picked up on that. All right, so let's wrap up. I'm just going to just do a quick recap for us of what we have covered because there's a few things in there. So first up, right, if you have ever been in that place where you've intentionally chosen to make a change to your lifestyle, picked a health or well-being goal, or even another change in your life, and you found yourself just self-sabotaging or getting to the end of each day and just for some reason haven't found the time to take the actions towards that goal, firstly, please be kind to yourself. All it means is that you are a human being. All right. We have this resistance to change that's built into us because most of what we do, most of the decisions that we make each day, most of the ways that we think, speak, feel, and act are not driven by our conscious intent. It's driven by our subconscious beliefs, our self-image, old patterns that are wired into our brain and our nervous system, and our habits. And so if we want to make change in life, if we try to make big changes quickly, we're kind of dooming ourselves to fail because we're pushing against that 95% of our brain. 5% against 95%, I mean, the math's kind of obvious. So I've shared with you a simple 5-step process so that you can slip the change under the radar and reprogram a new self-image, a new version of yourself in a way that does not require the massive willpower that we'd otherwise need. So I'm just going to recap the 5 steps. The first one is think about who you want to be in 5 years. Close your eyes, go 5 years into the future and ask yourself, who will I be and how will my life be if nothing changes? If I just keep going with the same patterns I'm practicing right now. And then ask yourself, who will I be and what will my life be like if I make changes? If I make some upgrades to my lifestyle, to my health and well-being practices, to my daily routines, to my habits. And you get to choose which one of those do you want, right? That's the first thing. And you can supercharge that by even in your imagination having a conversation with the version of yourself, with that future you living 5 years from now, and asking her, is there anything that she'd like you to do? So that life can be better in that future, right? That's step number 1. Step number 2 is think about that version of yourself that you're choosing to be. How does she think, feel, speak, and act? And in particular, what are the differences compared to how you think, feel, speak, and act in your daily life right now? Identify what those differences are, brainstorm them, journal on them so that you're capturing them. Step number 3 is pick one. Pick one change you want to make and then dial it right back so you can identify a super, super small shift that you can start making within the next 24 hours that is so small that it is so easy for you to do that it is a complete no-brainer, that you do not need to pull on any reserves of willpower. You can just do it easily, and you can do it every day easily without having to call on that willpower. Step number 4, it's obvious, do it. And actually, I forgot the planet. Step number 4 is plan it. Plan it first, plan it a day ahead, and rehearse in your mind completing that change, that shift successfully. And then step 5 is, of course, do it. And notice, catch yourself succeeding and celebrate the fact that you've done it. Celebrate your successes. And then, of course, it's rinse and repeat. The magic sauce I shared with you is have an attitude of certitude, of knowing 100% it's already done. It's already done. All you need to do is show up consistently with that. Be that version of yourself, right? And then it just becomes natural. So there's 5 steps to be able to slip change under the radar so you can actually make shifts to your daily habits, patterns, and routines in a way that avoids, circumvents that resistance to change that leads us to self-sabotage. Now, I know for some people, motivation, particularly when it comes to health, can still be a biggie for many people. And we can still feel resistance. We can still feel that it's a struggle to stay motivated. So if that's you, if even with the tips I've shared with you today, you still find motivation a challenge, I do have something for you to help you with that. And that is a quiz to find out, well, what is the big kind of motivation killer, if you like, that's getting between you and your health goals. So if you want to take that quiz and find out what what I've learned over the years is that people broadly fall into one of 5 types or 5 major motivation killers. If you want to find out what the big one is for you, so you know where to focus your energy, I've got a quiz for you that will help you with that. The details and the link are just there up on the screen. And, when you complete that quiz, I'll send you a report as well with your results and with some thoughts on what you can do with those results to help you make some changes. So that's an additional thing. And as well, if you want a copy of my notes so that you can review what we've covered, just write notes and I'll send that to you as well. I'll send you the link to today's show notes. So there's a little reminder. All right. So I will be here same time next week. Now for New Zealand, because clocks will have changed, it would be midday in New Zealand on Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern time, US Eastern time if you're international. And what we're going to talk about next week is time. I don't have enough time is one of the barriers that comes up the most in everybody that I've coached, whether it's about wanting to make a change in our health and well-being or in some other area of life. The I don't have enough time trap is really a big killer of gold. And I'm going to tell you right now, doesn't matter how true it feels, it's not true. It's not about time. It's about how we manage our focus. So next week, I'm going to go over some techniques and strategies that you can use to manage your focus so that you can work smarter, not harder, so that you can get through the things that are important to you, actually usually in less time, and so that you can create more of that momentum. And I'll be sharing one of my resources with you as well, which I call 10 ways that you can reclaim your time. So some additional strategies there. This has had huge impacts. I've had clients who I've worked with and covered a huge amount of material, and just the strategies that I'm going to cover with you next week have provided the biggest shifts and really helped them create huge momentum forward, not just in their health and well-being, but in their business, with their family relationships across the board. So I'm really excited to share that with you next week. It'd be great for you to come and join me. I'm going to wrap up there. So that's it for now from me. I would love to just know in the chat any other kind of ahas or nuggets that you've taken out of today. Thank you again for all those who joined live. It's fantastic to have you along. If you're listening on the replay, again, just drop replay so that I know and we can connect around that. That's it from me, Anna McKinlay, helping you to create a strong foundation of well-being and happiness in your life so that you can be and feel empowered to thrive in your business, as a parent, as the unique human being that you are, because your self-care matters. And taking action to look after your health and well-being, that creates the strong foundation on which everything else in your life is built. So I hope that this has served you. And until next time, I will see you on another live stream soon. Thanks so much for joining me. Bye for now.